now I know that the right sound is going to be the sound that manages to express whatever it is that they were feeling.
Yeah. Kia ora and welcome to today's episode of Singers Having Coffee. It's so lovely to see you. In today's episode, we're joined by Claudia Friedlander. She's a voice teacher, professional singer, personal trainer, and author of Complete Vocal Fitness. I actually found Claudia's work many years ago when she was on a number of the must-read lists for singing teachers, and Complete Vocal Fitness has become an integral part of my teaching, and I'm so excited to be sitting down with her today. We're going to be unpacking that slippery slope of the word support and breath management and what that means, maybe even reframing it a little bit, because there is a lot of misinformation about there on both of those topics. Claudia will talk to us about why support isn't just a fixed hold, and it's about living with the coordination that changes from moment to moment in the singer's body. And that's what we singers learn through our own singing practice, but it's so fantastic that Claudia actually teaches this and has informed the way that I like to teach this to my singers as well. We're going to get some practical tips as well, which is absolutely amazing, on simple myofascial release tools. We're going to be working with a sponge ball if you have one, but it's okay if you don't. And we're going to be freeing up the abdomen and the ribs for fuller breath, full of in breaths when we're singing, rib cage mobility, and you're going to be able to feel the results immediately. I promise you this has made a huge difference in the way that I sing and the way that my students have been working. We're going to be talking about how practices like yoga nidra can really help us to sense what's going on inside when we're singing and when we're practicing our singing. And we're going to be busting myths and talking about strength, range of motion, cardio alignment. There are so many things that we're going to be talking about. So if you've ever wondered, am I doing support right? Am I breathing correctly for singing? What should I be doing? Then this is the episode for you. Let's get straight into it, and let's welcome Claudia Friedlander to Singers Having Coffee. I loved your work and the way, I read your book ages ago when I was, because it comes up on a lot of recommended reading lists. And I think it's on the Voice Geeks reading list on Facebook. And because I was getting into fitness and being told all these things from various voice teachers as well as physiotherapists and I was like, there must be something more with singers with fitness. And I loved your approach to fitness and how important it is for singers, and this idea of support and stabilization within the muscles. And then I literally couldn't sleep last night. I was going through my mind thinking, is it all support? Because I was asking someone yesterday actually in the studio, I was like, what is support to you? She'd never had a singing lesson with me before. She'd had a couple with other people. And, I was just asking her, what is support? Can you even tell me what that is to you? And I was thinking, is everything that you say support? Do you feel like it is? Because I know you said that there's a couple of ways that you can describe support, and that kind of none of them is really wrong. I mean, there can be a wrong way to describe support.
Well, I think that this really is a good inroad for a conversation that we can have about singing and fitness. And what I will say, there's so much you can say about support. I think that the reason that that I would say that there's no wrong way to do it is that people know when they feel supported, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's an unmistakable thing. Any singer can tell you that I felt like my voice was really well supported during that performance, or I felt like I had no support,
Yeah.
on that high note. But then when you ask them what it is, you're going to get a million different answers. And the fact that a concept that seems so integral for singing for so many people, singers and teachers of different styles, um, I found it fascinating that such an important concept is so difficult to define. Um, my whole thing is that, like, I want to know what's really going on when we sing. I want to know, how do we produce all these sounds with our bodies? What are the mechanics of it? And how does our imagination translate not only into tuning pitches, but expressing emotions that are unmistakable when they come through the voice?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much about the voice that seems mysterious that I feel like the more we can know about how it actually works, how the body coordinates itself to produce these sounds, the better we're going to be able to do it, and the better I'm going to be able to explain to somebody else how I think they might be able to improve their coordination in
Yeah.
a certain area. And so this amorphous, mystical concept of support, I think is a really good inroad, because I actually have a very specific definition for what I mean when I say support.
That's
But it's
I
probably going
love
to be
that.
different from what other people would say. But I would still recommend that people think about, like, well, when I'm supporting, what am I doing? What does that mean to me?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you can't come up with like a very specific anatomical thing, then that will help you clarify for yourself what it is that you are doing in the moment, the activities that you are engaging in, and the way that you are using your body that results in you feeling supported.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for me, support, I prefer the term breath management because it's less used and less difficult to misconstrue, I think. But management can also feel like very hands on. But for me, breath support or breath management is anything that you deliberately do to regulate your subglottal breath pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Now, there's a lot to unpack with all those terms. But the reason that I find that a useful definition is that, to me, singing distills down to movements, very nuanced and sophisticated movements. But you could say the same thing about a ballet dancer,
Yeah.
that distills down to very sophisticated movements that are motivated by feeling, um, that are expressed in the moment, never the same twice. Um, but it still is movements. And once you know what the movements are, you can figure out how to coordinate them. And once you
Mm-hmm.
know what those movements are and how to coordinate them, you can look at your own anatomy. And just like an athlete trying to, shave a couple seconds off the marathon time, you can figure out, how can I improve range of motion with this aspect of my vocal anatomy so that it performs better?
Yeah.
How can I how can I strengthen this aspect of my vocal anatomy so that it coordinates better with the other muscles that it interacts with? And then singing, to me anyway, gets a lot less mysterious. The expressive and communicative qualities of singing will always be mysterious, but the movements that we engage in order to do singing don't have to be mysterious. And there
Mm-hmm.
are lots of movements that we can engage in that will serve to regulate our subglottal breath pressure. And depending on your preferred breathing style and the movements that feel good to you, there are different parts of your breathing anatomy that you can choose from in order to regulate your subglottal breath pressure. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why support is so tricky, because I could teach you to do exactly what I'm doing with my body, or it would seem to the two of us that you're doing exactly what I'm doing. It might not feel good to you,
Yeah.
because the way that we breathe evolves in response to all of our life experiences. How I was a clarinetist for many, many years. That affected my breathing style. I like particular, fitness activities. That also influences my breathing style.
Mm-hmm.
And my body is the shape that it is. Like, my container is the shape that it is.
Yeah.
And so the way that it's going to feel good to me to breathe might not feel the same. It might not feel good to you or anybody else. So it's important to just notice, how is the individual singer supporting their voice, and what observations can I offer them that might help them to do it in a way that's better and more satisfying.
Oh, I love that. There's so much. I mean, I think support, as you say, it can be this like airy fairy thing. I know, like, because I live in Germany, and I actually keep on. I was saying to someone today, I'm speaking with Claudia Friedlander, and I because is your family German?
Eastern European,
Okay.
most recently through Germany, I think.
Okay, because your name just sounds so German to me. I was really struggling to say it with an English accent. Although I'm from New Zealand, as soon as I see a name like yours, I immediately was saying it a couple of times like with the German accent. But I think here they call it Stütze, which I can't stand that word, because it's like a Stütze is like a support as well, but it's got such and I think support sometimes has a very fixed sort of feeling. When you say support, people often feel that it's a thing that you do to, like, it's a holding kind of. I feel like support is too fixed in this way. And I love that you say that, singing like dancing. And I love using dancing analogies for like dancers, and the same thing for sport. I think it's really great to use sports analogies when it comes to singing, if, depending on what the singer is doing. And to liken it to these types of movements, that it's always ever changing, depending on your fitness level and your lung capacity and things. Obviously, we've all gone through COVID, which is, it's affected our lungs as well in another way. And what is support then? And, it's changed. I know mine has. But I think that's so perfectly thinking about this idea of support as being something that's moving and movement, because I know that you're a personal trainer as well. And I loved when I read that you went and became a personal trainer. Why did you decide to do that? Because fitness and singing has often, and I know that when I was learning to sing, or when I started my singing journey, teachers would tell me, like, you shouldn't be doing too much fitness, like definitely no strength training, like just swimming, like only thing you should be doing is swimming, no crunches, no Pilates, it's going to ruin your voice. So why did you decide to then become like a personal trainer? Is it in this, with the connection of the voice? Why did you decide that in conjunction with the voice?
Well, there's a bit of my origin story in the preface to my book, which is that I always wanted to sing and nobody wanted me to sing. And that is why I picked up the clarinet. I had a lot of fun playing the clarinet. I became very good at playing the clarinet. And then when I was in my early 20s, I had the opportunity to engage in some body work that showed me that I'd had a lot of chronic tension that had been restricting movement in my throat, restricting range of motion from my breathing.
Yeah.
And as soon as that started to let go, I found that my voice had really opened up and become more resonant and freer. And so I decided to be brave and try it again.
Cool.
And found out that now I had a voice to sing with. And so I was
Wow.
so fascinated by the fact that structural changes to my physical body made it possible for me to sing better. And then I went to conservatory and was poorly served by my teachers who were just like, we'll try this, we'll try that, we'll push on it harder.
Yeah.
And I thought, this doesn't make any sense, because I've already experienced that my voice is my instrument. My instrument can be changed. It responds to change the same way that, your body changes in response to exercise. And so at first I thought, well, maybe I should find ways that that voice teachers can use simple body work modalities in the studio to help their students experience what it was that I experienced. Oh, and also figure out what is singing technique? Like, what is the coordination that people are engaging in? And so I've always been very fascinated by the mechanics of singing, and very struck and moved by the malleability of the body. It changes in response to our intentions.
Yeah.
And when I became ready to let go, let down my guard so that I could breathe more fully and express myself more fully, my voice responded. So these two things have been very intertwined. And at first I was quite surprised to find out that that was not the case for other voice teachers to the extent that it was for me. I settled on fitness because it helped me so much. I had a hard time understanding biology and anatomy. And so when I had the opportunity to learn anatomy from the point of view of somebody who's working with the entire body, instead of just trying to figure out what does the thyroidnoids do, and what is the cricothyroid joint, and what are all these little structures in there that I can't see or feel, that have to you have to be able to visualize it in 3 dimensions, but just figuring out how does a hinge joint move? And then just watching how movement expressed itself really gave me a profound understanding of the way that the voice worked, and the ability to internally map the movements involved in breathing and in phonating, all these subtle movements that we can't see them or feel them, but we could still learn to coordinate them, just not in quite the same way that you would learn to do a squat.
Yeah.
Because you're not getting the visual feedback, you're not getting the sensory feedback, but you're getting different kinds of feedback. And if you can become sensitized to them, then then it will work. I also like anything that makes things just practical and objective is going to be great for our students because when they don't understand why they can't do the thing, they can get really freaked out and they can think maybe it's me, maybe it's my instrument, maybe I will never be able to sing that high note, maybe I will never be able to sing that scale. And so when they're practicing the exercises, it's not just, all right, I'm going to see if I can do this, that, and the other thing. It's going to be like, I'm going to try to do the thing and then I'm going to get upset if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right. So when I can provide somebody with the assurance that like, here's a procedure, it's all just movement. Engage in these movements, you will get the result. We can't
Yeah.
predict what it'll sound like, but you'll probably like it.
That's so cool. And that's sort of, I mean, just from a, I mean, like I'm trying to, that's just from a movement perspective. I think that's because I mean, I know that just from personal experience, from learning more about my body in terms of like not just doing cardio, like actually going and working on strength training and figure out where my body is in space and time was like a really big learning curve. So I can imagine how, learning more about that as a personal trainer from that perspective of how you can also help someone with the movements and guide someone rather than just going, okay, no, that's right, that's wrong. Because I think that's also a part of becoming a PT, right? Is like obviously technique, but also guiding someone, just like we learn when we learn, about the pedagogy of teaching singing. We learn about how to describe it in a better way for our students. You would also learn how to describe it in a better way for your singing students as well. I know that you also worked then as a fitness instructor.
Well, and
Or
I
you
still
probably still do.
well, not just for my voice students. I provide
Okay.
fitness instruction for students when it comes up and it's time to work on things like improving range of motion for your breathing.
Okay.
Then I'm really happy to have this expertise. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
talking about support, one of the things that's going to determine how well your support system functions is whether or not you have access to full range of motion for your abdomen and rib cage when you inhale. And so having some simple modalities that I can offer a student in the context of a voice lesson where they can free up tension in the abdominal area and in the rib cage and be able to take a fuller breath,
Okay.
that's going to be a much more practical way to help them with their support than just tell them, no, take a deeper breath, take a lower breath. Right. And then they'll
Hence,
try.
yeah,
But if then they're
expand.
meeting with resistance from their tissues, there's
Yeah.
only going to be so much they can do. So you show them, okay, this is going to loosen up those tissues. Then they move more. Then they can breathe more deeply.
Mm-hmm.
It's very useful to be able to do that. So I do maintain my fitness certification, and I continue to learn more and more and more about how to be able to help people do this in the context of a lesson.
That's so fantastic. Am I allowed to ask them what you would use for someone? Because I know that, so I teach a lot of dancers. And, for dancing, sometimes dancers they love to hold in their stomachs. And, if they've been encouraged to do that, and, a lot of dance classes, because I'm, musical theater performer myself. So, a lot of the warm ups is basically like hundreds of crunches. I personally, I've been going through the one where you're doing the side to side, like with the kind of, I always call it that the I don't care wiggle, kind of like making sure that the bottom half is stabilized and just kind of like wiggling from the top. And I've always used that one. But do you have another, maybe one or two things that people could use to free up that area, like for if someone is struggling with tension in their abdominal area?
Great. I have some toys at the ready now.
Ooh.
This is a gorgeous ball. Shout out to Jill Miller of Tune Up Fitness, who's created this amazing system of self-myofascial release tools.
Cool.
This is a rubber massage ball, but I want to talk to you about the sort of, she calls it a sponge ball. It's like a stability ball, but you don't blow it up all the way. And I know that I'm not the only voice teacher who's doing things with these little squishy balls, but
I've seen those at the gym before.
you may see things that are like this and then some things that look like this but aren't like this. Sometimes there are little balls that are full of like sand or water.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, you'll see in yoga classes, they will use these little balls.
Mm-hmm.
They call them mini yoga balls. I've never used them in the context of a yoga class. But what I like to do with this, there are many things you can do with this. But if you can use it to release in the abdominal area, and I can give you a link to some videos with exercises, so
fantastic. I'll put
your
those
followers can have a look. But
I'll put those in the show notes then for wherever We're listening to this. I'll put the links down the show notes for the ball that you've got in your hand as well, and also the video for the exercises.
Disclaimer, before you do this, if you haven't done a lot of stretching or myofascial release for your abdomen, it may be very, very tender in this area. So go super slow. You don't want to muscle through this. You want to really just listen to your body and find out what it needs, because even just a little bit of release in that area will have immediate payoff for your breathing and your singing. What you want to do is position yourself on a mat on the floor, and it's going to be face down in a prone position. And the starting position, you want to position the ball right between your sternum and your belly button, and then just lower your weight down onto the ball very, very slowly, because you're going to feel some pressure there. Now you
Mm-hmm.
can let more air out of the ball and you'll feel less pressure, but mostly just like support yourself on your arms so
Mm-hmm.
that you can control how much of your weight goes onto the ball. And then when you get to the point where you feel just that little, hurt so good stretch that you get when somebody's giving you a massage, and just hang out there and breathe, because it's the breath that is actually going to be giving you the massage. When you inhale, you'll feel your abdomen expand and press against the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And if you breathe really deeply, you'll feel your body sort of like lift up a little bit off the ball, as the volume of air increases. And then exhale and see if you can comfortably sink down a little bit lower onto the ball. And then that's it.
Fantastic.
That's the exercise. You just inhale and exhale. If you find that it feels good to you, you can experiment with different positions, move a little bit to the left, to the right, and then shift your body so that the ball is between your belly button and your pelvis instead.
Mm-hmm.
That was extra tender for me when I first started this. But if you spend, 5-10 minutes doing this and then return to a standing position, take some time to breathe and feel what's different, and then go back to practicing your singing. Notice if your abs start wanting to tighten up again right away,
Mm-hmm.
right? But for the most part, you're going to feel just this increased expansion. Um, and that's going to make it possible for you to not only take a fuller, lower breath, but also have more kinesthetic awareness of that part of your body so that you can feel, where is everything moving when you inhale? Did you take a really expansive breath? And did something like tighten up again in response to something that was coming down the pipeline in the song that you were working on? And if you do notice that tighten up, can you decide maybe you don't want to tighten up there?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's fantastic. So you're lying, just so I can visualize it. You're lying on the ball, like with your ball, the ball here. You said under your
Yeah.
sternum, right?
Yes,
Here.
on a prone position, so you're face down on
Okay.
the floor,
Face down
propped
on the
up on your
floor.
elbows or on your hands so that
Mm-hmm.
you're supporting yourself, and you'll feel it.
Oh, goodness. I'm going to
And
try
yeah,
that.
I'll send you some links.
Yeah,
It may
that's
take some
really
time to see it.
cool. I'm going to try. I don't have one of those balls, but I'm going to get one. I tell you, it's going to be like next on my Amazon shopping list.
And then yeah, well, it's probably cheaper here in the States, but it's not a big expensive thing. It's like $13 to pick one up in the States, and it's one of the most valuable things I have in my studio.
That's
You
so
can
cool.
also free up range of motion a bit for your rib cage with it too. If you lie on your back, prone position, knees up, feet on the floor to support your lower back, and then position the ball like between your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And the right position for this is going to be one where you feel like your ribs are lifted up off your pelvis so that you can breathe more easily. You may want a book or a pillow under your head to support your neck in this position. But with the ribs sort of lifted and with the ball under your back, it makes it easier to feel the movement of the ribs as they lift and separate on inhalation, and then let them settle down. Maybe exhale a little bit more when you exhale, not by like pushing air up, but most of us also don't, we get locked up and we don't exhale all the way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not encouraging you to like drive air out when you exhale, but just invite yourself when it's time to exhale. Can you release a little bit more? Can you settle a little bit more? Because it's range of motion for these structures that is going to have the most impact on your subglottal breath pressure. When you can take a fuller breath, you're going to end up with a better quality of breath pressure inside your
Mm-hmm.
lungs, right? Here's my lungs, right? your lung tissue is actually made out of very similar material to the rubber that this balloon is. And so visually, you might not be able to feel this when you inhale, but when you inhale, the air pressure inside your lungs is considerably greater than the air pressure outside your lungs because the tissues that were sort of moving and kind of subtly resisting the inhalation are now full of the energy potential of the effort that you put into that inhalation. And so now we've got all this great subglottal breath pressure ready to help and support our singing.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, what support is you're supporting this. You're supporting the conditions that were present when you took that breath, when you onsetted, when you started the phrase. But then as there's less and less air left in your lungs, the subglottal breath pressure is going to change.
Yeah.
And so what you do to regulate your subglottal breath pressure to maybe keep it a little bit more intense as you get to the end of the phrase is what I would call support. It's what you're doing to support the singing that you were already doing that was well supported by the breath that you took. But then as the pressures changed, you needed to provide a better quality of subglottal breath pressure so that you could finish the phrase.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Mm.
I think that's one of the biggest kind of tripping points for a lot of singers, that they take the breath and they feel that this feeling of support without really, as you're saying, without doing anything, because the lungs are full. There is that subglottic pressure, but as they're coming to the end of the phrase, it's then where the abdominal muscles or the six-pack muscles want to then like pull in to push the breath out. And that's what, for me, a lot of the time I'm trying to work with my students on, is that what is support in that sense without it being that yanking in of those abdominal muscles, to try and allow the rib cage to kind of stay out. I suppose it really depends as well on what you're singing and like what style you're singing and how long the phrase is, like with everything, but without engaging those six-pack muscles.
Maybe you do. Maybe somebody does need to engage the six-pack muscles, but I think it's important to do it intentionally, because what are you doing, right? When you engage your abdominal muscles or when you keep your ribs expanded, what are you doing? Well, both of those activities, both of those movements, if you will, have an impact on your subglottal breath pressure. Opening the rib cage decelerates the rate at which the air can escape, which increases the pressure. Engaging your abdominal muscles accelerates the rate at which the air is trying to escape, which also compresses the air, increases the level of subglottal breath pressure. These two activities at the same time are basically how I was taught to support. That's like the classic bel canto appoggio, appoggiare, to lean on, because it can feel like if you're holding the breath back with your ribs, but then you're driving it out with your abs, you feel like you've got like this bag of air that you can lean on, right? And so that was their sort of word for support, because you can lean on the thing that is supporting you. Now, you can increase your subglottal breath pressure that way, but that doesn't work well for everybody. And also, I think I was taught to support in that way before I had something to support, right? So I thought that the support was the singing. When I started to sing, what would I do? I would hold my ribs open, I would engage my abs, and then, like start with that. Instead of realizing that, no, take a breath, start singing, release the breath, and then as the forces start to change, you're going to know right away that you need a little bit of extra oomph. And then being able to coordinate whatever forces are best for your body to decelerate the rate of airflow, accelerate the airflow, compress the air, increase the subglottal breath pressure, so that you're doing it in a more seamless and intentional way. For me, the gold standard is, if you're doing something with your abs, I'm not going to say don't do anything with your abs, because you might need to do something with your abs, but are you doing something intentionally and consistently? Or are you just jabbing with your abs when it's time to make the high note, right? Or squeeze out a little bit of air when you get to the end of the phrase? That's kind of, that's a compensation. That's your ace in the hole. But if you develop a system where you are finding out, how does my body want to support the continuation of this quality of breath pressure? some people push their stomachs out as part of their support system. That's what feels good to them.
That's how I was taught, actually. My teacher used to put like a band on my stomach, and I'd have to try and hold the band outward with my stomach. And it always was so uncomfortable for me. I couldn't ever, like, I didn't feel like I ever kind of like could hold on to the note. So as soon as the band was away, I'd do whatever the hell I wanted, you know. But when the band was there, I obviously had to try and push out to be a good student. But I love that you're saying that it's about finding what's good for you and finding what's good for, you know, what's good for your body, and more of this idea of body awareness. I think this is something. I know that you have an online course, which is fantastic. I've only seen some of the snippets of it. And I know there's lots of, I also have an online course, but I think this is almost the reason why I sort of say, even though I do have an online course, that not everyone can learn from an online course. You can learn sort of, you know, you can learn the principles, but then to have, maybe that doesn't work for you, because I think they hear this one rule to rule them all, and they think, okay, I need to push out, but then they get confused because they're like, okay, well, no, actually, like, Zoe, you said I could breathe like this and I could breathe like this, and so which one do I need to take? And it's like, okay, well, you need to choose for yourself and feel which one works best for you, for the quality of the tone that you're trying to get out. And I think this is probably why we're not going to be replaced by AI, actually, as singing teachers. That, you know, it's still about that personalization that needs to go on, and that real kinesthetic awareness of what's going on inside the body. I think it's wonderful.
And I think it's more important for me to try to teach my students that, you know, how to improve their own abilities of interoception. It's my new favorite word. It's not quite the same as kinesthetic awareness. Interoception to me is like you've got your inner microscope and you're going to home in on your, you know, this muscle or that body part and notice what's happening. Which the Yoga Nidra, I have a Yoga Nidra podcast, and I think it's really helpful for that, because you can sort of like get used to developing your powers of focus, awareness, concentration, and then it's going to make you more sensitive to these subtle body movements. But as a teacher, the thing with the online course is that I can provide resources to help people investigate what's going on for them. I can encourage them to train their awareness in this way, and I can make suggestions about how to respond to the feedback that they're getting from their body if they notice that, like, oh, this is tightening up when I do this, or oh, I can't really do these two things at the same time. But the question that you always end up with is like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right?
Mm-hmm.
And so having somebody available to provide you with real-time feedback can be important. I think that the danger for that, for both a fitness trainer and a voice teacher, is what is the feedback that you're providing them? Because traditionally, let's say I come from a classical singing background, and there's this obsession with like wanting to make the right sound. Am I doing it right? Am I making the correct sound? Am I singing the right notes? And so I thought for a while that my job as a teacher was to tell my students whether they were making the right sound. And now I know that the right sound is going to be the sound that manages to express whatever it is that they were feeling.
Yeah.
So I have to help them find out what is the right sound for them. I have to help them find out what is the right way for them to breathe. You know, as a fitness trainer, fitness trainers think that it's our job to make you look the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And I could talk a lot about that. I'm not interested in helping anybody look like any kind of aesthetic ideal. I want to help you function better.
Yeah.
And what your body looks like when it's breathing really well is just going to be what your body looks like when it's breathing really well. My job is to help you coordinate all of these tissues and moving parts so that you can set yourself up to breathe really well.
Yeah.
Not tell you how you're supposed to breathe and not tell you what you're supposed to look like when you're breathing.
Mm-hmm. I think that's, and I totally respect. I think that a lot of, I mean, we could talk for ages about the role of a singing teacher and the way I also did my bachelor in classical singing, and the things you get told as a young classical singer, and sort of the way that it's like I was so confused by what was happening, because sometimes it was like a yes, sometimes my teacher said no, and then she said yes again, and then it was a no, and I was confused. I was like, it sounded the same to me. But that's why I've changed my teaching like style over, it's evolved over time. And I asked my students, how did that feel? What did it feel like? And then when a different sound comes out, I say, that maybe isn't the one that we're going for. It's like, okay, well, what did that feel like in relationship to the other one? And I've found that that's just had a much better impact on my students' ability to practice at home, because it's been less of the yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, sounds right. This sort of, where teachers used to live with their students. And it was like, so that you could never possibly, I know that my singing teacher learned from Sister Mary Leo, who was Kiri Takanawa's teacher as well in New Zealand. And so
Wow.
she said that a lot of her students she used to go and live with her, so that they could never practice incorrectly. And I just think that it takes the autonomy, it takes your own ability to feel your body and to feel what's good for you as a singer. It takes that all away, and you're constantly wanting the external validation for your voice. And that's why I love, and I'm so glad that you mentioned your yoga nidra work. So I'm very new to yoga nidra. I've like, my concentration level span is very low for the real. I'm like on the go all the time. But I love your yoga nidra work, because I love the idea of focusing in, that I can get better and work on my concentration and thinking inside about what I'm feeling.
Yeah, I think it's great. For those of you who might not be familiar with yoga nidra, it's a meditation practice. Yoga nidra also translates to yogic sleep. And so I love this style of meditation because it's a guided meditation. You can do it with a live person talking you through it, or you can do it with a recording. There are lots of great recordings available out there. And I've started making my own. So you do it lying down in a comfortable position in the dark with your eyes closed. So you don't have to, like, I also do a seat, but yoga nidra just it feels supported because I don't have to work to hold myself upright. My experience of it is that if you drift off to sleep, it's fine. And I have some help for focusing my awareness because I've got this ongoing voice telling me, okay, now look at this, now look at that, now be aware of this, now notice that.
Yeah.
So that's supporting the present moment awareness aspect of it. So I think it's a really good introduction to meditation practice if you feel intimidated by the idea of having to like sit in lotus position on a cushion and om and am I doing it right? I don't think there's any way to do yoga nidra wrong. Because if you fall asleep, you fall asleep, but if you pay attention, you pay attention.
I love that. I think I was watching I was listening to a podcast on the Huberman Lab. I'm like slightly obsessed with that podcast at the moment. And he's a neuroscientist from Stanford, I think it is. And he's talking about the benefits of yoga nidra, and it's equated to actually having a nap. Like it's even better and more energizing for our bodies apparently than taking a nap. So going through a yoga nidra sequence, like on your podcast, is fantastic. Not only is it energizing, even if you do fall asleep, but it is energizing and also bringing in that awareness to what is going on. I think it's fantastic, and especially as singers, because I think it helps us to, again, leading back to this idea of support, I think it helps us to feel our bodies in space and time to see when we need that support to come in, rather than just going, as you were saying, like, okay, I breathed in, so I need to support right from the beginning. And I need to like hold myself in this situation. I'm an Estado master trainer, so we talk a lot about, although I disagree with this part of Estado quite loudly, actually, where that I like to think about support and this idea. I know Estado talks about anchoring, this idea of support being static, and I love this idea of students feeling inside what do they need and when do they need it, rather than sort of saying slap that on, hold yourself up and pack your lats to in order to support that belted sound, because maybe they don't need it, maybe they don't need as much, maybe it's just about standing up straight, feeling that body, as you're saying, releasing some of the tissues, rather than trying to hold something.
So here's something you can say to your us still friends about support being static. what needs to be consistent and static, and this is just the physics of it from my
Yeah.
point of view anyway. What needs to be static is the consistent subglottal breath pressure. And for your body to be expressing consistent subglottal breath pressure, it has to be consistently changing.
Yeah.
You have to be doing that. You have to be consistently creating that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a movement. You can't hold a position or it'll just peter out.
Yeah. I think it's I mean, that's definitely, it's a challenge, I think, with some of the way in which I think, because often it's sort of, oh, I don't know, I could get in trouble. But then again, I really don't care.
I mean, yes, when you dissent with the when you dissent against the monolith that is Estel or Nats or Academe, you know.
I get in so much trouble all the time because I tell them that I don't, but you have to teach exactly what's in the book, right? When you do, which is why I don't teach courses. I found it very helpful for what it was, and then I think technique, I think vocal pedagogy needs to evolve with time, and unfortunately it hasn't evolved in some situations. But I will also be discussing that at length, I'm sure, with my colleagues at the World Conference in August, which we like to talk about these things.
I mean, the funny thing to me, Zoe, is that it's all made up, right? Humans have always sung.
Exactly.
We've always sung. They've since we had the current configuration that we have of the hyoid one, which goes down back tens of thousands of years, if not, I don't even remember. It's a very long time. And so we've just found different ways to express ourselves vocally.
Yeah.
And then somebody will make up a system to try to expedite, teaching somebody how to do something. And then you get attached to the system and you forget what it was there to support.
Yeah.
So I think that even with pedagogy, what I'm interested in doing now is just taking what it is that I understand about biomechanics and how we can structurally change our own bodies and help our students structurally change their own bodies to be, for peak performance in singing, just as then they can take that information and incorporate it into their concept of technique.
Yeah.
Now, it may change their concept of technique if they had been going around saying, sing from your diaphragm, and then they find out what the diaphragm actually does. And, find out that when they have this awareness of things firming up in that area, then what they're actually doing is engaging their abdominal muscles for the purpose of accelerating the breath release. Then they will have to change their concept of singing from the diaphragm so that it's more in alignment with what the body is actually doing. But I think that there can be lots of ways for people to help other people sing better. It's just that it's better if it doesn't leave out this piece of how your body functions and what we know about how to help it function more efficiently.
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's so much amazing research going on about the body and the biomechanics of singing and also the biomechanics of movement and all of this. It's just, I mean, that's why I'm sure that you're the same. I'm constantly going to workshops, webinars, learning about all these new things, because I feel like sometimes my opinion on something or the way I teach it will change from one year to the next, because it something new will come out. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'm okay, guys, as of this moment, this is what we know about the movement. And, I like to keep that ever changing. But no, I just think it's important to, that something new comes along and then you change your perspective on it. And I that's why I love teaching singing, because I feel like sometimes I'm a bit of a medium. I sort of take on all the information that's out there in the singing, and I try my best to put it in a way that the student who doesn't necessarily have all this experience in singing is, in a way, package it up so that they can kind of utilize it and use it in their own way. But I think coming back to this idea of fitness, and you were saying as well about, we said so much, but this idea of using the structures in the body. In your book, The Complete Vocal Athlete, you were talking about, or you have a singer's fitness series or sequence, whatever we want to call it, that you recommend singers go through. Do you think that it's about strengthening particular muscles? Although I feel like now my question is redundant because I feel like you're going to say it's about strengthening the whole body in terms of singing. Or is it really, because again, you know, a lot of singers like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Is there a way that singers can improve their fitness? I mean, obviously there is. We know sport is good for our cardiovascular health. We know that it's good for our overall health. But say a singer who wants to become a better singer, is it about improving and strengthening the whole body? Or is it, as you laid out in the Complete Vocal Athlete, is it about strengthening specific parts of the body, in particular when we're talking about singers?
Well, I'm glad you asked because Complete Vocal Fitness is now getting a revised edition that I'm working on right now.
That's
yes.
so cool.
And the main thrust of the revision is going to be incorporating everything that I have learned about myofascial release tools for the purpose of improving vocal function.
Wonderful.
Because to me now, I mean, with everything that I've learned about fascia and how we can work with all of the tissues of our body, not just like the muscles and the joints and the tendons, to improve range of motion and bring things into balance, is a much easier way and a much more pleasant way and a much more customizable way to exercise than the traditional strength training regimen that is in the first edition. And I'm not saying that the exercises in the first edition are not still good exercises, but I have, and this came out of what the forced lockdown over the pandemic. I couldn't go to the gym anymore. I needed to do something to continue my exercise and research, and that's when I did a deep dive into fascia fitness.
Wow.
And I'm so excited to be working on the book revisions because I really do feel like there's the possibility of using these materials not only to help singers improve their vocal function, but to help teachers learn how to help their students improve their vocal function in a way that doesn't require a fitness certification, in a way that people are less likely to be thinking about like, oh, I'm doing these exercises so I can look good, so I can get slim and jacked, so that I can, more strength is better. All of the things the traps that people can fall into with strength training exercises, because we don't necessarily need to have, I mean, sometimes if people are like very deconditioned and they need to like tone some of the muscles of the deep core so that they can support their alignment and their breathing better, then that's going to be very important. But for the most part, what we need is to increase range of motion, increase flexibility, and bring things into balance in a way that the exercises, rather than like adding load to movement and working up a sweat and no pain, no gain, a lot of these movements actually reduce load from traditional movements and focus in. You're talking about these rotational movements. I have a series of rotations that you do on the floor with the Corgus ball that isn't just working on just sort of like the global idea of like, now I'm pivoting from the pelvis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And loosening that up. But each of our vertebrae articulate against each other. They rotate, they flex, they extend, they side flex. And if you can just learn to improve incrementally range of motion for your individual vertebrae as they move against each other, then that's where it really frees up your alignment when you're standing.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than doing a million crunches and back extensions on the bench. Adding load to those movements is great once things are free and in balance. But I've just been having a really wonderful and very productive time working with myofascial release movements in the studio and helping other singers and voice teachers to understand how to apply this as well.
That's fantastic. So you're essentially saying, I mean, is it? Oh, I think I'm going to choose my words carefully because I'm a big proponent as well. As I said to you, I'm a big I work out a lot. Well, what is a lot? I do about weight training about 5 days a week and 1 day of cardio.
That's a lot.
Which I suppose is a lot. I work with a PT and I love it. Like for me, a lot of my strength training is also massive stress relief. It's makes me feel good. I love it. Like I finally found a version of exercise that I enjoy doing rather than like trying to like torture myself through these spin classes, which I couldn't stand. And I think that's really interesting that you're saying, so actually singers don't necessarily have to go and start a 6-day-a-week fitness regime in order to become better singers. Because I know a lot of singers that, or I have singers in the studio who, you know, if you say to them, or if I say to them that this is going to benefit their singing, they're going to they're going to run with it, you know, and they just want to become better singers so badly that they're going to do everything that they possibly can. And I love that you're, you know, so you're saying that they don't necessarily have to go out and start lifting weights or start strengthening in that sort of way, adding load to these movements in order to become better singers. It's about gaining range of movement and things like that as well. But probably as well, like using body weight movements then as well, would you say, in order to gain that strength?
Well, body movements are going to be more global and more functional, generally speaking. But I'm just encouraging people to look at the function,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we're talking about like sports specific training for the vocal athlete, um, how are you trying to improve your function? Well, if you want to improve your breathing, bigger pecs are not going to help you breathe more. Stronger lats are not going to help you breathe more. Freer rib cage, freer abdominal muscles, more balanced abdominal muscles will help you breathe better. So
Mm-hmm.
usually the muscles that surround our rib cages and our abdomens are overactive. They do not need to be strengthened at first. They
Yeah.
need they need the chronic and habitual tension to be released.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've released that chronic and habitual tension and brought things into balance, then yeah, you can go ahead and strengthen your abdominal complex, and that might be even better for your support. But if you start to strengthen your abdominal complex with the idea that you're going to improve your support, but you're building it around a lot of habitual and chronic tension, then that's not going to help you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that good cardio fitness is very important for singing because our ability to consume oxygen, right? If you're very sedentary, your oxygen consumption is probably not going to be that great, and that means that when you get to the end of a phrase, you're going to feel like you're running out of breath, even if you're not, because you're running out of oxygen. That's
Mm-hmm.
something that our bodies can adapt very, very well. So I would just look at the function. Um,
Okay.
uh, and if you enjoy strength training for the sake of strength training or other sports that you like to play or just how you like to be in the world or how you like to be in your body, then that's wonderful. And then you just want to pay attention to are the strength training movements that you're doing supporting your vocal work or might it be contraindicated? And there are not that many things that are contraindicated. I mean, building strength around chronic tension is contraindicated. So I think that incorporating some myofascial release into your routine is going to be good for everybody, just so that we know that we can feel confident that what we're doing is helping rather than restricting
Yeah.
range of motion. Exercises that elevate your upper trapezius, right? Shrugs, probably contraindicated because a lot of building up this area
Mm.
could encroach on the muscles inside your neck. Not necessarily true for everybody, but you want to pay attention to that. You want to exercise with good form so that you're not jerking your head full when you lift, because that's going to be bad for your alignment and rough on your neck and all these sensitive things in there. So it's just a question of, are you using your exercise routine in a way that is going to enhance your vocal function?
Mm-hmm.
And are you being intentional about it? Because when people were like, "Oh, don't exercise, it's gonna be bad for your voice," they weren't analyzing the movements. They weren't
Yeah.
looking at the function. They just noticed that when people got tight in their abs, they couldn't breathe as fully. But having flabby abs is also not going to help you breathe fully. Look at the function. What's gonna
Yeah.
help you breathe more fully? What's gonna help you support your voice better?
And which, I mean, it basically comes back to this idea of you've got to look inside yourself and find what works well for you. I was working with a physio in London, actually. I lived in London for a couple of years. And he said to me, "Oh, you shouldn't be doing any back squats. That's loading the bar here is terrible for singing." And I was like, "Why?" And he said, "Oh no, it's just really awful. It's gonna, you're putting all your weight here, and you're gonna be squishing your vertebrae here at the top of your neck." And I'm like, "Well, that's if I'm doing bad form, isn't it? And if I hold the bar a bit lower on my back, then I'm not necessarily going to be squishing the top vertebrae. Obviously, it's uncomfortable. Then I don't do it. But I think I was just meaning because there's often quite this dogmatic approach of saying, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that for singing. And people kind of follow it rather than looking into themselves and going, okay, well, actually, I found since I started strength training, my higher register is much better. Whereas I think a lot of the time I was being told, oh, you've got chronic tension here in your throat and in your head and your neck. But whereas I think that was also a bit of psychosomatic, because they were telling me I was tense, I was then more tense. And so therefore it was almost like a chicken before the egg kind of situation. And since doing more strength training, I actually have been able to have much better long phrases, much better. But again, it's anecdotal. That's just me. And I've found that it helped. I just struggle with this black and white with fitness and singing. That's all. You've got to look what's best for you, rather than saying, yes, you go and do this fitness regime and you will be an amazing singer.
Whether it's the physio or the voice teacher who tells you you've got tension, it's not helpful, because what is tension? Muscles act by tensing, right? If you have tension, it's because you are tensing. You don't have tension. You are moving in a way that is creating some discomfort or limiting your range of motion for something. And so what you need to do is figure out how to move in a different way. Because if you just look at the tension and try to release the tension and analyze the tension and judge the tension, then what you're doing is focusing on the tension, and you're not focusing on the movements that you could be doing differently that would be the movements that would help your singing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if we can think more in terms of movement and understand that tension is how movements happen, we can get a different view of how singing happens.
I love it. On that note, thank you so much, Claudia, for joining me today to have this chat, because I just feel energized. I know I just want to go. I've been looking at so many of your YouTube videos, and I think I've also just learned a lot through the last week of learning through you. So thank you so much for all your content that's out there in your books. I absolutely love the complete vocal fitness, and thank you so much, because I think it's so fantastic. I'm really looking forward to this work with you, the myofascial release that you're going to be bringing out.
I'm very excited to share it. Thanks so much for getting together today.
No, thank you so much, Claudia. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for your time. You've got to go. I know that's your student. So have an awesome day. And thank you so much again, Claudia. I really appreciate it.
Okay. My pleasure. Have a good one.
Thank you.